you make a video game, you have to surrender some control. For instance, over how the game is received, or what rival games might also come out that same year, or if modders will fill it with Shrek characters. Or should that be when modders will fill it with Shrek characters? The point is, there are a lot of unknowns, and one is which character in your game will resonate the most with players. Often it isn't the protagonist, or even someone that's given particular prominence, but is what's known in TV as a breakout star, a character with a certain charismatic edge that means they rise from relative obscurity to become the face of the franchise itself. They are the Sheldons of the video game world, at least until someone mods Sheldon into Starfield. I give it 45 minutes.
Pikachu is the king of the Pokemon franchise, even more so than Kingler, even more so than Slowking, who wears a false crown to rule over a kingdom of lies. The fact that Pikachu, the electric mouse, is the most iconic of all the Pokes is not even remotely up for debate. But what might surprise you is that this was by no means the case when Pokemon first arrived on the scene in 1996. Because in the original games, Pikachu was by no means special. Not only was he not the series mascot or one of the 3 possible starter Pokemon for players, he wasn't even that common to encounter, being catchable in only a few locations in the game. And even then, you had to be lucky, and even then, he had a weird sprite that made him look like an overstuffed knockoff Pikachu you'd win at a funfair. So how did Pikachu, little more than number 25 on the list of 151 Pokemon, get his face on an airplane? Because everyone realised he kicked ass. Pikachu's irresistible rise to the Pokemon throne began when the franchise started cranking out spin-off works, in which it was thought wise to put one particular Pokemon front and centre. And after a brief manga dalliance in which Clefairy is Ash's partner Pokemon... Sidebar, Clefairy? What were you thinking? Pikachu was settled upon to be the rosy-cheeked face of the spin-off anime, which didn't air until over a year after the game's debut. Pokemon creator Satoshi Tajiri said in a 1999 interview with Time magazine that making Pikachu the mascot wasn't his idea, and instead it seems the credit must go to the studio who produced the Pokemon anime, who noticed the Electric Mouse's breakout popularity with kids who were actually playing the game. So Pikachu owes his fame to Japanese animation studio OLM. And if you think the fact OLM has a suspiciously Pikachu-esque lightning bolt in its logo is evidence of an underhand deal struck between Pikachu and the studio to make Pikachu famous, well, that's an opinion you can hold. I couldn't possibly comment.
Sorry, not sorry.
Everyone likes a space cowboy. The Steve Miller Band understood it, George Lucas understood it, even Jamiroquai understood it. Do you get what I'm saying? Even Jamiroquai understood it. So in retrospect, it's not surprising that Cade 6, the robot gunslinger voiced by nerd culture icon Nathan Fillion, would become the breakout star of Destiny. The prototypical 2014 looter shooter that was a lot of chaotic multiplayer fun, interspersed with solemn moon wizards explaining the collapse, the darkness, the traveller, and other proper nouns of presumably galactic importance.
It speaks now, because Oryx has arrived, come to fulfill the final covenant of his son.
In the midst of this, Cade 6 was refreshingly relaxed.
Cade, our discussion is not yet concluded.
Oh, I know. That's why I'm leaving.
One of the 3 Vanguard that nominally governed over the game's character classes alongside Zavala and Ikora, Cade 6's actual role in the original Destiny was not much more than an armor vendor, but one who immediately impressed by frequently expressing his boredom at being stuck indoors doing paperwork and never being above bending the rules.
How about an unsanctioned op, using modified stealth tech, to infiltrate a dreadnought above Saturn's rings, so we can knock out its weapons, create a transmat zone, and send in the cavalry.
Publisher Bungie clearly recognised Cade 6's immense popularity among Destiny players, and the enigmatic robot became the leading edge of all Destiny 2 promotional materials.
Look, long story short, I get busy, and I'm thinking, I've got this. You know, when you're in that, you go, I got this. But man, I so did not have it.
Perhaps there's no greater evidence of Cade 6's runaway popularity than the shock value Bungie knew it could extract from killing him, which happened in the Destiny 2 expansion Forsaken, when Cade 6 was killed by villain Aldrin. who was able to best the charismatic robot because Cayde 6 had been significantly weakened by having carried the entire Destiny franchise on his back for several years. This moment of high emotion for Destiny players was one that could only be equalled by the reveal, several years later, that Cayde 6 was somehow to return in the unreleased at the time of recording this video, The Final Shape expansion.
I wish you could have been there.
Yeah, me too, kiddo. But hey, I'm here now. Wherever the hell here is.
And while there's no scientific way to measure Cayde 6's popularity compared with the other significant Destiny NPCs, here's an unscientific one. A few years ago, we published a video about video game-inspired tattoos we would get if we weren't so scared of needles, and many hundreds of commenters piled in with their own thoughts, suggestions, and descriptions of tattoos they have. A search of those comments reveals 0 tattoos mentioning Zavala, 1 tattoo mentioning Ikora, and 5 that mention Cayde 6. Making Cayde 6 the most popular Vanguard in Destiny by a margin of... Well, if it starts at 0... by a significant margin.
Animal Crossing is an impressive series for many reasons, but not least because it survived over a decade in which its main mascots were an extortionist landlord and a naked dog who appears to be high. Indeed, Tom Nook and KK Slider respectively can claim to have been part of Animal Crossing since its inception back in 2001, serving as memorable faces to this cozy, anthropomorphic life sim series in which the main character is always a custom avatar. Both were also present in 2005's Animal Crossing Wild World and 2008's City Folk. Remarkably, it wasn't until 2012 that the world was introduced to the character who is now probably the most recognizable and beloved face of the franchise, Isabelle. Serving as an assistant to you, the mayor, in Animal Crossing New Leaf for the 3DS handheld, Isabelle's cheerful attitude and enviable love of calendar admin hit the hearts of Animal Crossing players like a balloon gift hurtling from the sky, and quickly made her the surprise star of New Leaf.
Hi, I'm Josh's Digby amiibo. And I'm Isabelle.
Since her humble origins as one of the many NPCs in that 3DS game, Isabelle's legend has only grown. In 2015, Isabelle stole the box art center stage for Amiibo Festival on the Wii U. Then, in 2018, she became the only named Animal Crossing character to make it into Smash Bros., the highest badge of honor for any Nintendo character. Then, of course, being given a deservedly prominent role in the earth-shatteringly popular New Horizons, and for a brief time in March of 2020, being the focal point of a meme about her being best friends with Doom Guy from the Doom series. And if you can't think why the world would want to devote so much energy to imagining Isabelle and Doom Guy being best friends in March of 2020, I encourage you to think harder.
Please, allow me to introduce myself. My name's Astarion. I was in Baldur's Gate when those beasts snatched me.
Baldur's Gate 3 has perhaps the greatest roster of RPG companions ever seen in a video game. There's the wizard addicted to eating magical items, the high half-elf with a mysterious past, the romanceable druid with an erotic bear transformation that we absolutely cannot show you because we'd be demonetized, but you can probably judge it fairly from this squirrel's reaction. So imagine how compelling a companion you'd need to be the standout hit companion of Baldur's Gate 3. And while the game has only been out a few months and it's possible in time opinion will shift, it seems like the most beloved of the game's roster right now is Astarion.
Hurry, I've got one of those brain things cornered.
At first appearing to be a hapless fop you find lost by the roadside, Astarion is quickly revealed to be an extremely capable rogue, able to deliver bonkers damage up close or at range, and more pertinently, he's a blood-sucking vampire spawn.
Come on then.
Probably should have led with that on reflection. Sorry Astarion, shouldn't mention reflections, really. Often complaining and vocally disapproving of anything you do that even approaches kindness to others, Astarion's sharp retorts have nevertheless made him the favourite of many players.
Really? We're messengers now.
Perhaps players are just responding to Astarion being emblematic of what makes Baldur's Gate 3 a good game. Engaging and charismatic characters whose motivations become more, not less, complex the more time you invest in them. Then again, perhaps it's the nighttime bouts of sexually charged bloodletting, which is not a phrase we ever thought we'd use in a positive or even neutral context.
Let's make ourselves comfortable, shall we?
Astarion places highly on every companion ranking article we've read since the game came out, but perhaps the greatest evidence of his scene-stealing power, and that developer Larian recognises that power, is to compare the artwork for Baldur's Gate 3 when people started playing it in early access way back in 2020 with how it looked upon release in 2023. 3 years later, Astarion has well and truly staked his claim. Sorry, Astarion. Probably shouldn't mention stakes either, really.
Enough! By what power do you dare command me, mortal?
I need only reason.
And failing that, Ebony and Ivory here can be very persuasive.
Oh, Dante, we were only playing.
Why is Morrigan from Darkstalkers the breakout star of the Darkstalkers series of fighting games? Well, there are different theories. Perhaps it's that her moveset was pretty accessible, being similar as it is to that of Ryu and Ken from Street Fighter. Perhaps it's because she is, as Kotaku once called her, one of Capcom's, quote, least dressed female characters. Or perhaps another factor could be our own theory that Morrigan was always going to be the surprise hit of Darkstalkers because the other characters in Darkstalkers are things like a Sasquatch, a magic pharaoh, a weird fish man, and a punk rock zombie. I wonder why Lord Raptor didn't get invited to Marvel vs. Capcom, said no one, ever. By comparison, Morrigan the Succubus, despite being simply one of the 10 default starting characters in the first Darkstalkers game, was clearly destined for more. In fact, over the years, Morrigan has become the only representative of the now all but abandoned Darkstalkers series that it's common to see, a feat achieved by receiving invites to approximately 1 million other fighting games in the years since, including a huge number of crossover fighting games, most recently Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite.
Ah, you speak of the Stone of Souls. I've seen it in Lord Jeddah's possession.
And when a Capcom game is released without Morrigan, it's a reasonable bet that somewhere in there you'll at least find her famous outfit.
Ease into the new Morrigan outfit from Darkstalkers and take Frank's style to devilish new heights. Armed with powerful new attacks, including the awesome finishing shower, you'll show those zombies the true meaning of being undead.
Is Lord Raptor represented in Dead Rising 4? Asked also no one, ever.
Sans from Undertale is one of very few skeletons who, when you see them, you hear their music in your head, along with the spooky scary skeletons and Eddie from Iron Maiden. You've doubtless seen Sans before, even if you haven't played the video games he's found in, Undertale and Deltarune. This wisecracking, sardonic skeleton is undoubtedly the most recognisable figure from these beloved indie games, and if you disagree, we'd just point out that Sans is the only Undertale character that wrestler Kenny Omega has entered the ring dressed as.
Well, Kenny Omega, Halloween starting early for him, as he calls on the power of Sans from Undertale.
This is in stark contrast to Sans' actual role in Undertale. He's not the main character, he's not even the most prominent character out of the roster of charming monster weirdos you'll encounter in the game, at least on a normal or pacifist playthrough. Yet in this constellation of genuinely terrific characters, Sans' star shines brightest. Perhaps because if you play the game as evilly as possible, he serves as a sarcastically difficult boss fight at the end, or because he wears a jacket that can only be described as a good jacket, or his iconic Megalovania theme music, or his passionate love of skeleton puns. It's probably all of these. Plus the fact that if you disappear down the Undertale and Deltarune rabbit hole, Sans' backstory is the most mysterious of all, seemingly aware of the fact that he's in a video game and perhaps trapped in some kind of time loop. Through it all, this 8-bit skeleton seems weirdly determined to look out for his brother. Now that's love. Seriously, the only other way you're going to cry over this few pixels is if your 55-inch OLED TV gets a dead pixel just outside of warranty. Am I right? Oh right, you like jokes about bones, but not OLED comedy. Pearls before swine.
Ah, hello. You don't look hollow, far from it. I am Soler of Astora, an adherent of the Lord of Sunlight. Now that I am undead, I have come to this great land, the birthplace of Lord Gwyn, to seek my very own son.
With Dark Souls proving as popular as it has, there was always going to be an instinctive need to find a figurehead for the series. And thank God the community decided to rally around Soler of Astora and not, say, the Gaping Dragon. Soler, with his famous love of sun praising, is one of those characters who transcends the series they hail from, and even if you're one of the many video game enthusiasts who would rather eat a bicycle than suffer the equally difficult and no more nourishing task of completing Dark Souls, you probably still recognise him.
Soler! Praise the sun!
The truth, though, is that Soler is just one of many equally quirky NPCs a player can encounter in 2011's Dark Souls, and compared to some of the others, doesn't even have that intricate or rewarding a questline.
Please, take this, the symbol of my appreciation.
Unless you think it's rewarding to watch Soler have his brain eaten by an evil maggot, which is the default way his brief storyline ends. You can prevent this terrible outcome by a significant effort to kill the maggot before it latches onto Soler, unlocking the marginally less terrible outcome where he ends the game distraught, all his dreams in tatters. But can be summoned to tank aggro for you against the final boss, if you can call that a pleasant ending. Nevertheless, the fact Soler is briefly cheerful was unusual enough to see this one NPC win his way into the hearts of Dark Souls players. Although Soler is certainly more of an unofficial figurehead, seeing as developer From Software would never do anything so generous as acknowledging his immense popularity. He's nowhere in Dark Souls 2, and only his armor can be found in Dark Souls 3. Unless you choose to believe the fan theory that between games, he degenerates into this gigantic hellworm. I choose not.
So those were some total randos who ended up becoming the face of the franchise. Can you think of any more examples? If so, drop a note.
Outside Xtra.
Outside Xtra, of course. I forgot Outside Xtra. Really went on to steal the show. With the momentum of a runaway freight train. The undeniable charisma. Their star, well, is it done rising? We don't know. But this video's done, and I may be fired. So hey, check out these other videos, and if you really enjoyed this, then why not go the optional extra mile of supporting the video work we do by going to patreon.com/oxclub, where you can join our Patreon. There's a cool Discord that you get access to that is just for OXSC members, and we have a lot of fun on there. There's a lot of different threads, a lot of cool chit chat and stuff, all about video games and all sorts of other stuff. It's a good time. All right, take it easy folks, see you later, bye.